We'll start very simply. Tell us who you are and what you do.
I'm Luke Harding. I work for the Guardian newspaper. I write books and I travel around the world reporting on conflict.
Thank you, Luke. Tell us what you were talking about here today.
Well, I was talking about my book, The Snowden Files, which was published in February, which is a sort of non-fiction thriller. It's an account of Edward Snowden, who everyone knows now, and really I think what we can say is the biggest leak in history, kind of release of, the leak of tens of thousands of sort of secret documents from the NSA, America's most secret spy agency, and what happened next, his collaboration with The Guardian, my newspaper, the kind of fury from capitals around the world, and the fact that now we know, we have proof, evidence if you like, that the US and the UK are spying on everybody. You, me, civilian populations, the whole lot.
Tell us, some of the shocking revelations which came out of that the biggest leak in history. What should we be afraid of?
I don't think we should be afraid of anything. I think we should try and be cheerful and be kind of optimistic, but I think we should kind of know how the world has changed, how our world has changed in the last sort of 10 or 15 years, but especially in the last 5 or 6 years, because if you think back 20 years ago, we had no Google, no Facebook, the internet was in its infancy, and really we've had a kind of explosion of big data over the last few years. At the same time, the spy agencies, British and American spy agencies after 9/11, which they missed, have acquired kind of new powers, new kind of technical skills, which go, I would argue, kind of beyond the imagination of Orwell or Huxley. I think we need kind of new words to describe it. And really we're at the stage now where these two agencies are routinely scooping up all of our data, our private data, so that means our web searches, our emails, our geolocation data. In other words, if you have an iPhone and you go from place to place, there's a record of where you've been, and also your text messages, who you text. So pretty much everything. This is all being sucked up. And until Edward Snowden came along, we didn't realise this.
How would you describe the man, Edward Snowden?
Well, I think Snowden is a patriot. Certainly that's how he sees himself. He doesn't see himself as someone who wanted to kind of blow up the US intelligence community, but rather as someone who wanted to reform it, to bring it back to kind of common sense, because his thesis was that in the years since 9/11, essentially the NSA had kind of gone out of control and stopped spying on bad guys and started spying on vast civilian populations, and in particular on Americans. I would say he's someone of the right, Republican. He tried to fight in Iraq at one point and join the US military. It didn't happen, it was a disaster. He donated to Ron Paul, who's really the kind of standard bearer for libertarianism in the United States. And if you track his blog posts, they are pretty right-wing. But Snowden himself, I think, recently in an interview with The Guardian in Moscow, he was kind of intimating that he's more of a centrist, that he's been misrepresented. But he's certainly not someone of the left. And he comes from an American tradition of non-conformism, of challenging the state, and he fervently believes in the US Constitution. I think that's what really kind of drove him to do what he did.
Well, exactly. If you could expand on his motivation, why he did what he did.
Well, I think he felt that the US was violating fundamental rights, sort of the principles which had led to the US as being founded as a republic all those years ago. And he was also enraged by senior US officials who he thought were lying. For example, James Clapper, shortly before Snowden did this leak, he's the sort of director of intelligence in the US, was asked by Congress whether the NSA spied on millions of Americans, to which he replied, no, not wittingly. Now this has become a kind of famous moment because Snowden, of course, sitting inside the intelligence community, sitting in Hawaii, knew that that was precisely what was going on, and yet he felt that public servants were being misled, the public was being tricked, and that someone had to blow the whistle on all this, which is what he did.